I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on December 16th, 2016. Gallup's Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this live webcast, we do have a chat room that's available for you. A few of you are already out there in the chat room. It's right below the main video window. Just look down there if you're at coaching.gallup.com/live. We'd love to have you log in. Login button's bottom left-hand corner of the box. It'll just say login. Select that. Choose the guest account. No need to create an account. Guest account, put your name in where it says guest, and then hit submit. That will throw you right into the chat room, and we will be taking your questions live during our program today. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can always send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, or use the contact form right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center. Just GallupStrengthCenter.com for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs, and you can catch the video, both streaming and now downloadable audio for offline listening. A lot of you are taking advantage of that as we see our numbers continue to go up on our audio downloads. Take advantage of that on your mobile phone using one of the podcasting apps that's available for both iPhone and Android. You can get those downloaded. All the tips, directions to do that, as well as the link to the apps, is available on our coaches blog, as well as some great coaching material as well. Head out to coaching.gallup.com. Adam Seaman is our host today. Adam's a certified strengths coach with Gallup in Tulsa. Adam, great. I got that right. You're in Tulsa, right?
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yes. Yeah, welcome to Called to Coach.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this cast, and just overall just being part of the community and seeing all the videos of other people on and how you're introducing new voices and faces. And so, yeah, looking forward to seeing where we go.
Great to have you. 2017 is nearly upon us, and we're excited about some of the new things that are coming in 2017. Do you have any coaching-related goals or resolutions? I hate to call them resolutions, right? Because they're really goals. Do you have any goals for 2017 you're hoping to achieve next year?
Well, for me, I'm hoping to really focus in more on deliberate development of my own themes. You know, it's kind of that thing where we're all helping other people, and it's the cobbler's kids have no shoes. So I'm really planning to delve more deeply into applying my themes more deliberately. So that's my goal for 2017.
Good. I love it. Speaking of those, let's get your top five. So tell us what your top five are.
Yeah, my number one is strategic. So we all have an idea of how that one works. Individualization's my number two. And just a quick note on that, like a quick discovery I had recently. People with individualization, I've heard a couple people say it. How come I know you better than you know me? Or they'll say to me, Adam, you know me, I don't know anything about you. And it's because of the individualization theme. We're just really interested in that. So that was kind of an interesting little insight. Ideation is my number three. It's going to make me be a little random, sometimes even a little eccentric. And intellection's my number four. So this is why I like to go deep into some of the topics. And I know that not everybody enjoys that, but I can't not do it. And then my number five is input. And that was the trickiest one for me to grasp. I think, you know, a lot of people will have one of their themes or maybe more where they're just foggy on what it is and how it applies. But yeah, those are my top five. I'm pretty much in that strategic thinking domain.
And you have adaptability.
Number six.
All right. Yeah. And which we'll bring in, because I think that ideation adaptability for you is really, really powerful. You know, you said it makes you a little random, and
yes,
but it also makes you really powerful when it comes up with new ideas. We're going to talk about some of the things you're doing in your coaching practice there. And I think we'll see that adaptability ideation combo work really well for you. Speaking of intellection, oftentimes you might be best known in our Facebook group. If folks haven't joined our Facebook group yet, go to facebook.com/groups/called-to-coach. And you had mentioned some of your posts when you go about posting. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but when you go about the business of posting, it's not just about what you had for dinner or, you know, something light and fluffy. You're kind of digging in, right? I mean, for you, that's and not everybody, like you mentioned, some people like, oh, you know, because we go to Facebook for fun, But I always appreciate your insights when we're on Facebook. And you know what? The community needs both some light and fun stuff, and we need some serious stuff from time to time. So thanks for the input that you put in that as well. All right, let's talk a little as a coach, though. We like to dig in a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your business, what you're doing, how it works, some of those kinds of things. And let's kind of dig in a little bit there.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in the organizational development field for 20 years. I'm 87 years old. So thank you for laughing. Thanks for laughing. So no, I've been doing this for about 20 years, and it's mainly been my own job right out of graduate school. And so along the way, my input, I didn't know this at the time, but my input theme is collecting these tools and concepts that I think help explain our social world and our psychological world and how they interact. That's really what I've enjoyed. So I practice as I think the best description is I'm an applied sociologist. I want to help people understand what happens between people, what happens within ourselves. So organizational development is really this practice of applying those concepts. And so along the way, I would collect the tools that I think are really useful, have a high explanatory power. So you can see input with intellection there. And StrengthsFinder is the single most useful tool I've come across in all that time. And I've seen a lot. So I really wanted to take it deeper, really for myself. You know, everything that I think is useful is because it's useful for me. So when I got into the StrengthsFinder and the insights that it produced and how it helped me see myself differently, that's when I became greenlit, is what I call it. You know, like a lot of people experience StrengthsFinder, and then there's just some people like you, like the other coaches listening in today, that they want to go deeper. They want to take it further. They're more passionate about it. And that's the essence of our community. And I just want to take a quick note to say thanks for your job in, I see you as sort of the shepherd in the community. And even our conversation yesterday really gave me an inside view of how you see it and how you're really trying to not interfere with it, but you're trying to move it and shape it and nurture it. So whether it's through these casts or through the Facebook group, that's your philosophy, and that's what you're bringing to the community. So for me, participating in the community is really important. Doing things like going to the CliftonStrengths Summit was really important to support that, and I'm so glad I did. I want to encourage people for next year to do it. So to your question, what I do now. So I started off with adding in StrengthsFinder into my other organizational development work, and I discovered something. It was the thing that I loved talking about the most, because there's some things that after you talk about it a few times, clients want you to still do it, but you're not as excited about it. Or it's something I'm really excited about, but the participants, they're not. But with StrengthsFinder, it's both dialed up. It's me, I'm super enthusiastic about it, and then the participants really get a lot out of it. It hits home for them personally, and then it's also things that are relevant to their day-to-day work. So I began developing my approach to greenlighting clients. You know, that's my benchmark for success. If I can get someone not just to take StrengthsFinder, not just learn about their top 5 themes, but to want to then take it deeper. I just got an email today that already made my day. I told you about this woman who was in my session yesterday. She experienced StrengthsFinder in college. She came up to me on the break and she said, guess who introduced me to StrengthsFinder? And so I tried to guess. I said Chip Anderson, and she said, well, he was my mentor, but he invited Dr. Clifton to come and do the StrengthsFinder with my class. She was a student at UCLA. And so she was really excited to come to me on break to talk to me about it. Well, today she sent me this email this morning. She said, I want to share some of my takeaways from the session yesterday. And she said, I've been down lately, both personally and professionally. And I walked away from the session on StrengthsFinder we did yesterday, asking myself the hard question: where did I get off track in my life and stop using my strengths? So the next question for me is, how can I work my strengths back into my life. And I thought that was just awesome to hear how somebody recognized that that was an anchor point for them. Back in college, it probably helped her find her footing. And then today, in the professional world, I'm going to guess 15, 20 years herself, rediscovering that. So really powerful stuff. So finally, to answer your question, my focus now is turning toward developing tools and processes to support the coaches doing their work. That's what I discovered I love the most. I do enjoy the facilitating, I do enjoy the coaching, but I want to develop the tools and concepts that help make this stuff pop so more and more people can get greenlit about StrengthsFinder and get that excitement to keep the movement going. So
your business, Talent to Strength.
Right.
And I was tempted to put the S on the end of that, but no, just strength.com. Mm. When I look at the site, you put a lot of emphasis on at least some advertising around people who've taken it. And here's what the next step is.
That's right.
From an acquisition standpoint, do you see a lot of folks land on the site and then come right in that way? Or do you still have to do a lot of kind of data mining or customer acquisition through other means?
Well, so I think a lot of us who operate independently really struggle with this. It's the metaphor in my mind is hunting and skinning. And I know it sounds terrible. And I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for 25 years. But it's just, it's how do we get ourselves out there and let clients know of what we do? But then the thing that we really love and what draws us to this is the actual helping people nurture their talents and apply StrengthsFinder in their life. So for me, the website hasn't been, that's not the primary tool. It's just word of mouth is really how it works. And I guess what we're touching on here is maybe some ideas for other coaches in terms of business development. And Brandon Miller talked about it on a previous session. So I want to give a shout out to him because he's one of the external coaches in the community who really is about building the community. We've become really great friends, and other people know him as well because he's generous and helpful. And so what he talked about was getting out there and having people experience it is the best way to let people know about it and develop business. So for me, what's always been best for me is to partner with local institutions. Let's say it's a local university that does continuing education, or a local professional group like the local Society for Human Resource Managers, and make this information available to their members by doing a breakout session or attending, presenting at one of their luncheons. So when people experience it, then they imagine for themselves, this is so good for me. I understand myself better. I want this for my team or my employees, and they might bring it into their team. So yesterday I did a session with a company. It was the HR team, human resources team, that brought me in. And from there, the conversation began about how can we spread and embed this into our organizational culture. So it just starts with that. I also think the Clifton match, I want to call it the strengths match, but I think it's the Gallup match system that Paul's been talking about could be another great avenue for coaches as well. Oh gosh,
Gallup Exchange. Yeah.
That's the one. Okay. Sorry, Paul.
It's brand new. It's brand new. We'll cut you some slack on that one. Any other thoughts on that? I kind of interrupted you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, you helped me out. I think that's it for now. We can come back to it if anybody has more questions.
Well, you've got some ideas. You've got some materials behind you there, and like your real passion right now are tools for coaches. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what's the best of you in that space? Where is it really working for you right now? Yeah,
that's great. I love the way you phrase that. The best of me in that space. So for me, it's the visual side of it that I think helps add another dimension to StrengthsFinder for people. So the way people learn about their themes is through written reports at first. And so for a lot of people that works, but for other people that's not their dominant mode. So they might just read the names of the themes and think they get it. So I wanted to add a visual element. So these guys out here are your top 5 themes, Jim. So I wanted people to see that. Yeah, you're a ranger, number 1, you're woo, your communication, your maximizer, and your activator. So I use these a lot in what I do, and I place a lot of effort in making sure that the visual communicates the essence of the theme. And that caused me to have to really study the themes. deeply. And so the resources like the Theme Thursdays are fantastic for doing that. So I want to communicate it visually, and that's everything I do. And that's, I guess, the part that really would be quote unquote the best of me, is that I want to bring a visual element so that so it hits people quickly and resonates more visually. And yeah, that's basically what's behind me. I do that with everything I do, though. The visual side of things is what I'm always focused on.
Yeah. So for you, what's really an ideal engagement when you think about the space you want to be in and where you really want to help people?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me a feel, like who's your target audience and how do you want to help people the best?
Okay, very good. You scared my dog away with that question, Jim. So yeah, the space I most want to be in is kind of what we're doing now, is interacting with other coaches and strengths enthusiasts in the community to support them in having an impact with their clients. So for me, that's the number one thing. I've been a coach for a long time. I got involved with the life coaching and executive coaching movement in 1999. I've been consulting and facilitating, and really my biggest passion is working with other strengths enthusiasts. So that's really where I'm at, and supporting them and giving them the tools so that they could focus more on the craft than on, oh gosh, we see all the time in the Facebook group, hey, does anybody have a slide deck on this? Or what activities would you do for this? And that's because as a community, we're all engaging that challenge of how do we best engage our clients in this, what I call green lighting. How do we best green light our clients? Because that's what makes the movement perpetuate faster. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam, there's a lot of resources. You just mentioned those. We have tons of resources available now. For the last 3 years, I have been gathering, well, I don't have input. I have been gathering all kinds of resources and people around. Any advice for new coaches as we think about all these materials that are available? I mean, the coaching course now, where that used to be a lot, like 90% of what was out there, now really is dwarfed just by that's kind of the starting place. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff to do. As you think of the resources we have out there, any advice you'd give to a brand new coach, maybe just leaving our accelerated training and they get overwhelmed and they ask the question, now what kind of advice would you give them?
That's fantastic. Because that is true. When I went through the through the accelerated course, I had all these resources and I didn't quite know how to organize them or how to put them together. So I know other coaches wrestle with that as well. And so the first thing I would say is definitely go through the certification course, because then that opens you up to other things, just a community of coaches, especially on the Yammer group, which some people may not be familiar with. But for the Gallup certified coaches, it's a fantastic resource. There's just tons of things on there. And there are people, if you don't have input, there's somebody who does have input who's posting articles and references, and you just post your question out there. And of course, the Facebook group is very similar to that and effective as well. But I think the number one thing for people, after you finish the accelerated course, is talk to people, reach out to me, reach out to Brandon, reach out to some of the other coaches out there that have kind of gone through that very similar process. And I think too that it's more about the mindset you have after you finish the accelerated course. I think the right mindset would be to say, wow, I'm overwhelmed. How do I put the pieces together for me? How do I tell the story? Because that's going to be your authentic way to present and coach to other people. But don't take the mindset of, I've arrived, I have been stamped as Gallup certified, and always be learning and always be humble and always be curious about it. I think that's the spirit that Don Clifton had, and that's the spirit that I got from Kurt watching him. It was watching him play with the themes that opened up the possibilities. It's what said to me, wow, there's more discovery to be made. There's more connections to be made than what's just handed to you already from doing things like reading Now Discover Your Strengths, which I think for me personally is the number one most valuable thing, to read it and carefully understand it, because some of the things just don't jump out at you. And I think we'll get into some of that when we talk about applying StrengthsFinder. So those are my best suggestions.
Yeah, good. No, good indeed. And I think not prescriptive in the sense of do this and do that, because everybody comes at it a little bit differently. I think, and I see a lot of coaches who've come to this methodology and are brand new, and there is a lot to learn. Don't be overwhelmed on that. We have a ASC course going on right now. And in fact, they're graduating as we speak downstairs.
Right.
And some of them are like, they leave the course and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. Others have been doing this for a long time, and this is a tune-up for them. And so they all approach that kind of in a different way. Adam, we had a question from Andrea in the chat room. Do you customize each of those visuals? So as you're using these visual tools and some of the things that you're doing for clients, do you customize it for every single client that you have?
So, I can print off, I developed a software tool. Okay, when I say I mean not me. I mean, not I. I don't have any creative skills. I don't have any, visual skills. So I partner with somebody who does. I don't have the technical skills, so I partner with someone who does. So I have a program where if I enter in your top 5, it'll spit out a diagram with these kind of images in on one page. So hopefully that answers the question. And I want to kind of circle back to this, because I think this is really what might be helpful for people is maybe if I just talk about how I made sense of all of this. So what I did is I looked at my own journey with CliftonStrengths, and I'll just tell you real quick. The first leg of the journey wasn't very exciting. Someone recommended I take it. So I did. I have a folder about this thick of assessments. So I got my results. I read it. That's interesting. It was accurate, but then I don't know what to do with it. And this reminds me of what every possible, probable person goes through. They probably look at it and they go, that's interesting. And then we're so infused with assessments. I mean, it's just, we just added in as, oh, this is another assessment. So part of my job is I have to separate StrengthsFinder. I have to make people really understand this isn't just another assessment. So about 2 years later, it sat in my file. So about 2 years later, a friend called and said, hey, I just took this thing called the StrengthsFinder. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that one too, and pulled out my results. And this is a guy we went to college together. We know each other really well. So in that conversation, he was able to help me make connections to some of my themes, like the input theme I said was the foggy one for me. And he said, Adam, I've always been jealous of your ability to memorize a quote and just sum it in the moment. And he said, so I used to I would get a quote book and try to memorize it so I could do what you did, And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's totally not how it works. I'm sorry you spent your time doing that. And in that conversation, it helped me realize that input was useful. Well, it is about utility itself, that I use it in ways I didn't even know. And I didn't know other people didn't do that. So then I thought, all right, I really need to connect better with these 5 themes, my top 5, and not just understand the word that Gallup used, but to understand the description and the essence of that theme. And so each time I would read it, I would get new insights. I would read intellection and I would see a sentence I never saw before, even though I read it. And the sentence was, in the midst of company, you may retreat and kind of withdraw because you're thinking through an idea. And that's not how it's not word for word how it says, but I'm like, that is so true. People would ask me in social situations, what's wrong? Are you okay? And it would happen frequently enough that I would start to think, well, gosh, maybe I'm not good at this social thing or something. And the truth is that I was intellectualizing. I call it, I was in my lab, mentally. I'm like, because the thinking face, the intellection face doesn't look like it's a fun, happy face. And that's why people are saying, what's wrong? Why aren't you happy? I'm like, no, you don't understand. There's a party going on in here. You're just not invited, you just crashed my party, So it helped me to identify for myself how my themes operate. So I developed a model. It's similar to Name It, Claim It, Aim It. It's I call it COIN. It's an acronym where first, and it guides my coaching. This is why it's relevant. It guides my coaching and it guides group facilitation. It works in either setting. And the first step is I want people to connect with their themes. If they don't do that, nothing else matters. They're not going to get greenlit. So So that's the first step. And connecting doesn't mean just reading it. It means memorizing your top 5. I think almost every coach I talk to has this experience where they meet somebody who's taken StrengthsFinder and they're like, oh, what are your top 5? And they're like, well, I think it's this one or that one. And it's like, no, that's Myers-Briggs. You don't know, or something like that. So it's very disappointing because that means they're not getting any additional value from StrengthsFinder. That's what it tells me. So if I don't get people to connect with their themes, I don't move on to the next stage. But once they connect, I move on to observe. When you've connected with your themes, you can observe them. You can actually see them happening while they're happening. So I remember the moment I saw input happening while it was happening. I was listening to the radio in an interview with this comedian. I can never remember his name. He was married to Katy Perry, Russell Brand. All right. So he's a real interesting guy to listen to. And he said just to the interviewer who asked him a question, and he said, well, you know, honestly, I'm not a very reliable witness of my own existence. You know, it was just a weird phrase, but I really thought about that because he was being funny, but it's also true that we're pretty unreliable witnesses of our own existence. We think we're this way. We think we come off this way. Like just take Facebook, for example. I think in my mind, what I'm doing is I'm trying to explore meaningfully a topic. And that's how people are going to take it. They're going to say, oh yeah, Adam's just kind of doing that intellection thing. But probably there's somebody going, who does this pompous guy think he is? Or something, probably not those words. They probably don't, nobody says pompous anymore, but similar things. And so we think we come off one way, but we don't another. So anyway, when I heard Russell Brand say that, I like mentally rehearsed it in my mind. I'm an unreliable witness to my own existence. And I'm like, that could be useful one day. And here I am on Called to Coach using it as an example of input. So I observed my input in that moment happening, and that made me understand it way better. Because then if you could see your themes happening while they're happening, you could do something you've never been able to do before. And that's the third step, which is interrupt. If you didn't even know you had these themes, and you didn't know other people didn't, and you just never questioned them, and then you never observed them, then how would you interrupt a theme happening when it shouldn't happen? Now, the truth is you don't often want to interrupt your themes. They're doing what they're meant to do. They're helpful, but they're not a choice. Our themes are not a choice. And so the example I use, or I could do this with any theme, but positivity, which is my number 33, what could be wrong with the positivity theme? But if you talk to anybody with positivity, they'll tell you stories about how they might have talked with somebody and made them think that it was a yes when it really wasn't. So I had a friend who's a building contractor, and one of his vendors proposed a project to him. And by the time the vendor left, the vendor thought he had the project. He thought it was approved. He thought he got the contract, but he didn't. And my friend realized that his positivity was like, oh yeah, that's a great proposal. I couldn't be happier with it. So why wouldn't the vendor think he got it? So, you know, learning how to find the right match for our themes, matches versus mismatches. I don't even really think in terms of weaknesses. I don't think of the themes as ever weak. I just think of them as either a match for the situation or a mismatch, because we're the same person. We're the constant in our lives, whether we're going from meeting to family time to this or that. So it's about our circumstances are always changing. Our situations are always changing. Can we match our themes to the situation? And that's the fourth step of COIN, which is nuance. Developing that nuance to dial up your themes or dial down your themes. So I remember a student of mine said, you know, I was the loud kid in class and I would always get in trouble. And one day my teacher held up a ruler and said, you're using your 12-inch voice. I want you to use a 1-inch voice. And that he didn't know he was loud all the time. That was what the volume that he always spoke with. So he didn't know any different. But when you have that ability, a scale to kind of dial it up or down, I'll pause there. Yeah.
She was providing the interruption, right? At that point in using that COIN model, was sometimes we need a coach to provide that interruption for us to say, hey, I see a little inconsistency, or I see some ability. I think also there are certain situations where we can have everything perfect, but we can't control all the external environments around it either, right? I think some people, we get in a situation like that. You were talking about positivity, and that we come in to use that positivity to win a deal, but the cards just aren't in our favor at that moment. And no matter what we do, it's not going to happen. And I think people have to understand that as well. I love that outside looking in self-awareness concept that you bring to it, right? I think oftentimes we know we need that self-awareness component when we think about observe in your model, to really say, oh, okay, yeah, that is about me, right? Lifting up and looking in.
Yes.
And being able to say and having some self-awareness. I think that's kind of the key in that. So when you go through this coin model with folks, what are some things as you're thinking about each one of those? What do you think are some of the caveats in it? Like, where does it go right, and where maybe could it have some opportunities?
You mean for the client to apply it? Yeah, good. Yeah. So real quick, before I jump into that, I just want to add that this model then becomes my structure for how I move people through the strength development journey. And so it guides me. If I ever am like, okay, where do I go with this client, or what do I do? I'll just say, did they connect with their themes? Go back to C in the coin. And if they haven't connected with their themes, then that's where I'll focus. So it becomes a really useful guide. And it's also how I structure my group facilitations. And then with each piece of coin, there's tools or exercises, metaphors, handouts, worksheets, so that I'm not overwhelming the client all at one time. I'm layering it in with, let's just first connect with your themes. Now let's observe. Now let's interrupt our themes. Each of the nuance builds on your ability to interrupt it. You can't nuance it if you can't even interrupt it. You can't interrupt it if you can't observe it. You can't observe it if you haven't even connected to it. So that's the process I use. So when I go through these stages with people, I guess I haven't really experienced any kind of like problems with it, where it went off the rails, or somebody didn't quite get the concept. It's just, how much time are they going to give me to take them through the model? So if I only have one day of facilitation, I can't take them through all of it.
It makes it difficult, right? In just the amount of time that you have to do it, and their resistance to it, or their acceptance of it, is how fast they go. Do you find that you get some people through it really, really quickly, and maybe too quickly? In other words, like, no, let's slow down a little bit and really connect. In the name it, claim it. When we think about those, oftentimes I'm not sure we spend enough time in the claim it. We sometimes name it, and then we move on. We don't really get to that phase. When you think of, we use these terms, we throw them around a lot, of talent, themes, and then strengths, right?
Yes.
And oftentimes we roll through those quickly and totally forget about, or we think the strengths bit is the naming it bit, right? It's not the positive application of those pieces. Can you talk about, you've got a little bit of model that you walk through, and I love it because it's a lot of the stuff, right? You're really coming back with what Don says there, soar with your strengths. When you think, let's define really quick your definition. Let's think about, let's start with the talent first, theme second, strengths third. Walk me through your equation.
Excellent. So everything that I do, one of the prime directives for me is to always be consistent with Don Clifton's message. So that's what drives me. And so I just use Gallup's definitions. A talent is a naturally recurring pattern of feelings or thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that can be productively applied. Now, I know what every individual word in that statement means, but you really have to delve into it to understand the totality of what it's saying. Naturally recurring. So it's spontaneous. Your themes, your intuitions around arrangement and what is the optimal configuration of things, because arranger is your number one. You're not premeditating that. You're not trying to give people a hard time if things are out of optimal configuration. It's natural. it's what shows up when you show up. So naturally recurring pattern. So over and over again, we will see you behave that way. It's a pattern. That's what a pattern is. A pattern is made up of events. If it happens one time, it's not a pattern. But if given over time, this is how you'll behave, it's a pattern of feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. Lots to say about that, but that three-letter word can be productively applied also means they can be counterproductively applied. So that pattern is going to do what that pattern does. I think of it like a river. A river's just going to flow in the direction it's going to flow. If I don't want the river there, that's bad for me. The river's bad. But if I can learn to say, no, that's how the river's going to flow. How can I organize my community around the river? And which is funny because we're doing that here in Tulsa. There's a multi-million-dollar project going on to develop our river into an asset. The river's the talent, and then this project that's going to increase my property value because I live near it, that's the strength. We're making that river a strength. And so that's that one. Now the theme. Okay, you want?
Yeah.
No,
I was gonna say. So those talents are those things that we do, right? That's those patterns in us, the natural occurring. We group those into these things we call themes. Talk about that, and I think everybody knows what those are, but talk a little bit about that.
So a theme is as this is my understanding, so feel free to correct it if it's wrong, is that when Dr. Clifton was doing his research on these different qualities that people said helped them be successful, because he was studying people who were successful and what did they do, that he identified these talents and that they statistically clustered into groups, that each theme is a related group of talents. So your woo theme, which is your number 2, is several talents in there, which when you take the assessment, it's looking for that to tell you that you have that high cluster. So it tells me that maybe one of those talents in that cluster may not be super strong for you, but the other ones are, and that maybe because those are, it would be easier for you to elevate that aspect of woo, maybe that one talent of woo. So those are the themes, and we have the 34 themes. And I tell this story because I think it really helps people understand where they came from. Like when I deal with clients, and there's sometimes you'll get the skeptic, in the room, and they'll be like, well, this is just all touchy-feely stuff. Well, I tell a story. When I went to Oklahoma State University, one of the first things I learned is that the first president of the university had all the buildings built, the first classrooms were built, but he instructed that there be no sidewalks. And his thinking, I'll share this story sometimes, and I'll ask people, why wouldn't he want to put the sidewalks in? And eventually someone gets it. They'll say, because he doesn't know where people are going to walk between the buildings. So let's find out where people walk, and then we'll pour the sidewalks, the concrete for the sidewalks there. And that's really how I understand the themes were created, is Dr. Clifton was studying where did people walk to become successful. And then he tried to give language to it. And one of the most fascinating things for me is the evolution of the theme names. So when I hear, Harmony, I think was Peacekeeper, or Maximizer was called Varsity, When I hear about that, it helps me realize that it's not about the names of the themes, because we're trying to find the right names to really capture it, but it's about the description, the Gallup standard definition. That's what people should be focusing on. So anyway, that's a little bit about themes.
Yeah. And so we've got this naming convention, this framework, right, that we put around it. And I think sometimes we stop right there. Like, okay, so I'm woo. Well, so what? Right. And we take that woo, right, and we move that into something. So when it's applied, right, when I'm actually applying it to it and I'm using it in a positive way that's changing my own personal performance, right, then it becomes a strength.
Yes. Well, so that is the whole key, is about performance. So the definition of strength is consistent, near perfect performance in a given activity. Again, I know what every single one of those words means, but when you think about it, I could do something near perfect. I could summon all my energy and really concentrate and do it near perfect one time. or every once in a while, but I couldn't do something consistently near perfect. Or I could do something consistent, but maybe less than perfect. Maybe I could do it consistently good or consistently average or something. But when I could do something consistent and near perfect, that's a strength. And consistent and near perfect at what? An activity. So that's when I looked closely, and in the Now Discover Your Strengths book, he'll talk about what those activities are. He'll talk about Warren Buffett and his activity of investment. He'll talk about Tiger Woods and his activity of golf, or some jazz musician he references, but I can't remember which one. So those are that helped me understand what activities were. So now when I'm working with clients, I'll say, I could ask you, I could say, Jim, when you think about your role, what are the 3 activities that are most important for you to deliver for Gallup? And then I'd want to ask you, how are we doing in terms of delivering them near perfectly on a consistent basis? So you have how many casts of Called to Coach or Theme Thursdays? They're consistently near perfect. You might have one that go, well, that wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. And then you'll make the adjustment to do it. So, but overall, the pattern is consistent, near perfect until this call with me. I'm probably messing up your streak. No. But how do you make it consistent, near perfect? Well, one is, you can't help but bring your 5 themes to bear. Arranger, you're conducting a symphony of technology, of participants who are observing and the questions they're asking, and keeping up with my thoughts and what I'm saying. You're doing all of that solo right now. You're conducting all of it. Communication, you're asking questions to make sure that message sent equals message received, and getting clarity there. I mean, they're requiring no effort for you, so it's allowing you to then use your mental energies for other things that aren't as natural. But then what knowledge do you need? And some people don't know this, but one of Jim's superpowers is he can look at a microphone and tell you the brand and the features, and he has a lot of knowledge about the audio technical stuff that's involved. That's my technical word, stuff. It's just stuff to me, but to you, it's knowledge that you've collected and aggregated. Why? Probably because you love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I love it, and it's experience, right? That important element of while these talents come to us naturally, while they're grouped into these recurring themes that happen at times, and the strength bit of it comes as I work with experience, right? I know that ATR 2100 that's sitting in front of you because I have 30 of them here at Gallup. I've bought tons of them. I've worked with tons of podcasters who've had them. 5 years ago, I couldn't have told you anything about that. And so while that could have been natural then, it wasn't, because I had to apply, I had to practice, right? I had to jump in there. I know these things because of experience and practice with it. And I think, Adam, that's really one important part as we think in the strengths movement, is that knowing them and claiming them are awesome, but aiming them is really what we're trying to do here, right? We're really trying to, and I aim them because I've done 250 of these programs here at Gallup. I've done 500 or more webcasts of my own in my tech network. I've done hundreds of them with other people. I've practiced, right? We don't come to today in this interview with you. I didn't come in cold, right? It's 300 times I have done these kinds of things with people. And so I know it's the muscle memory, right? I know how to, if something were to break, I would know how to fix it. If something were to go wrong, I would know how to handle it. I wouldn't panic because I've done it before. And so I want to encourage our coaches, anyone listening to this, there's lots of practice that needs to go, even though we've identified these things. And in your role, Adam, and what you're doing with coaches, I think is super important in getting people to identify those things and then begin to practice.
That's right.
Right. And we're never done practicing that, but we have to apply those things. We have to develop our skills. A pitcher just doesn't become in the major leagues on day one. They have to go through a lot of practice. And by the way, not everybody becomes a pitcher just because they want to be. And then 2, they got to spend and invest an enormous amount of time still in it to really hone that craft and to be the best at it, right?
You have to suffer for it. I mean, I'll leave a workshop. I'll get the post-presentation blues every time because I think about what I could have done better. Why? Because I care about it. I beat up on myself and I hate that feeling, but it's why, we suffer for it. But that is exactly what I'm after. Is what you said was applying the strength formula. So I saw the formula: strengths equals talent times investment, parentheses, knowledge plus skill. Invest knowledge plus skill. So our work is not done when we've explained the themes. It's just begun. It's called Strengths Finder, not Strengths Found. And we can't measure strengths. Think about this problem. If a strength is an activity, whether it's a video cast or coaching or cooking or multiply, pitching a baseball, hitting a baseball, and then there's so many activities. How could we assess people's consistency and near perfection in all those activities? So what Don Clifton did was realize there's one ingredient that will determine whether an activity will be a strength or not, and that's talent. So talent this tool is assessing someone's talent according to the lexicon of 34 themes that we have. And then we go about the journey. We've begun the journey. We haven't finished it. When we take the strengths finder, my mistake at first was to go, oh, these are my strengths. No, they're not. They're the natural resources. They're the rivers that run through me. I don't know how. I don't know why these 5 rivers. They're the rivers that run through me that if I harness them well, I'm going to live a happier life. I'm going to be a more productive, more passionate, more engaged life. And up until StrengthsFinder, I've been running against the river because I have ideation. Well, that doesn't do you so well in the classroom when the teacher's trying to lecture and you're bored and you're trying to make connections and you're trying to talk, and then you get kicked out in the hallway. I didn't fit in the education system. I'm unemployable, really. I'm not a good employee. I'm too random and too, and I wasn't happy. And I credit StrengthsFinder with dramatically increasing my happiness quotient because of that.
Let me camp on that for just a second, because I think oftentimes we think before we took the assessment, we were doing everything wrong. And I know that's not what you're saying. Oftentimes, naturally, we put ourselves into positions to be successful and we're doing things right. I've heard that story, before. Sometimes that comes to us naturally. I think really what the power of a coach is being able to identify those things that we are doing right. And the framework, this incredible framework that we're given, gives us the ability to accelerate that success. So it gives us the ability to very quickly say, hey, look, we don't have to guess anymore. These are, based on the assessment, these are the top 5 or all 34 if you decide to go that route. These are how they rank for you. And here are some clues to get you moving faster to be more productive, right? It's great that we feel good about it. It's great. I hear this all the time on Twitter. Oh man, that really nailed me. That was super close. Well, that's awesome. It's always great to hear that's valid, but that's the very, very first step in taking that framework and making us more productive in doing the things that we do best in a way where it makes sense. It's all about accelerating productivity. For us, and all about getting to that a lot faster. And I'm appreciative of that. But to be honest with you, I've known my themes for 10 years. In the last 4, doing webcasts and recruiting, have really taken advantage of that arranger, woo, maximizer, communication, and activator, right? We've taken advantage of that river, so to speak, and maybe narrowed it in some ways to add to the intensity of the flow so that I can cut a channel faster, right? Because I know if I can get to more people faster, that's the art of recruiting. We think about webcasting and arranging all this stuff. Man, if you go back and listen to some of my webcasts when we first started doing this, they're awful. Like the talent, the talent was there. It was identified. The theme of communication, you can see it. But man, between that day and today, million times better. Why? Because I've practiced it 200 times, in that process.
And that's why I think that when all of us who get enamored of StrengthsFinder, it's about the themes. But when the smoke settles, like when the glamour fades, when we feel like, okay, yeah, I really understand the themes well, then what? Then, and clients will ask the same thing. Now what? And so that's why, to me, StrengthsFinder is not just about the themes. The themes are an absolutely critical piece of it, you know? But it's what do we layer on top of the themes that really bring it to life? And that's kind of what I'm after. That's the work that I'm doing, and that's why that's what I want to talk about. That's where I want to, you know, explore. That's why I want to develop tools. That's where I want to work with coaches in that regards, because that's what people need, and that's what's going to make this movement continue and continue to grow when people can get not just the themes, but then beyond it. That's why it's, for me, it's talent is where you start, but we want to get to strength, because life is way better. And I want to just say one thing real quick. There's probably some questions we want to get to. One of the great concepts that helped clarify this for me comes from a book called The Lean Startup. It's teaching people how to develop their business. And the concept is called product market fit. So if you're a business and you have your product and you have your market, but if you don't have product market fit, then you're a startup. So I think about this. What's the product? I'm the product. How am I designed? I'm designed with strategic, individualization, ideation, intellection, input. You're a product. How are you designed? You have arranger, woo, communication, maximizer, activator. So what environment? So that's the product. What is the market? And which is what I think of as our environment. What's the career? What's the life partner? What's the lifestyle? What are the hobbies? What's the environment where you have that product market fit? And I think that whenever people are experiencing dissatisfaction, it's a sign that there's some element of missing fit between product and market. And that, to me, is where StrengthsFinder is so valuable, as it begins that journey of finding product market fit. Life is way better here than when it's like, here's you, the product, and you're in this environment, and there's this gap.
Yeah, no, I think a good explanation and a good way to look at when we think about some of the things we do as coaches out there. It's important to help those individuals on that journey, which they have to go. They have to find themselves, right? We can't find it for them, but we help them find that place where they fit into the market. That's right. That's kind of a part of when we think about builders. You know, our product, the BP10 now, this Builder Profile 10. It's really to help line up those pieces to say, hey, here's where I can really have the propensity for a lot of success in those that I can. And so we're Adam, we're preaching to the choir, but I think it's really, really important in here as the coaching community as a whole gets a little bit of a reminder on that. Yeah. You know, gets a little bit, we've focused so much in the last 9 months on business, the business of coaching. I think a really good opportunity today to kind of come back to those titles, those names, those themes, the what we're doing, the structure, the infrastructure, and give some great just encouragement on, hey, in this practice, let's not forget, right? The goal is to make better versions or discover the superpowers. You use that. That's one of my favorite words, right? We have to continue to use our superpowers for good and help discover those. And really, it's a journey, right? It's not an event. It's a journey down that path. So, well, we're at the end of our time, and I'd love to take some questions from the chat room. The chat room's been out there, been very helpful, and we've taken a few from there. But Adam, thanks for taking some time today. I hope we discovered the best of you in this as well, and you're doing some great work out there. Any final thoughts before we wrap it?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for making this conversation happen. And anytime, if I can be of support for anybody in the community, just reach out to adam@talentedstrength.com, and yeah, we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Good to have you on here. And it's always good to hear from the coaches. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. If you'd like to be a guest blogger, we do have some opening for some guest blogs. It needs to be written, and you need to send it to us, but you can send that to coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio, and I mentioned in this show, the 200, I've done more than that, but of all the episodes we have available for you. They're available on our coaches blog, and that's really a one-stop shop for a lot of resources we have available. Just head out to the coaches blog, super easy, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, you can see a list of all the courses that lead to certification at courses.gallup.com. And if you'd like to unlock, we mentioned 34, maybe you have your top 5 and you'd like to unlock all 34. That upgrade is available at the Gallup Strength Center. You can purchase that there as well. Go to Coach, go to the Gallup Strength Center. Don't know why I forgot that. GallupStrengthCenter.com. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you share it. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Adam, thanks for joining us as well. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.